Hello and a warm welcome to everyone joining this online session today, where you'll be listening to insights about what it's like working for Cafcass. I'm Rehana Hanif, Deputy Director for Operations and Improvement, and we're really pleased that you've joined us today. And joining me today are some wonderful colleagues, and they'll be sharing first-hand experiences with you of what it's like working for us, and you'll hear about work-life balance, professional development, caseloads, all the things that we think about when we're weighing up whether to apply for a job. So a little bit about me. I've been with Cafcass since January 2014, so just over 10 years, and I came in as an FCA. And I've been in various positions since 2014, so as practice supervisor, service manager, head of practice, assistant director, and now as deputy director. We're really proud of our Ofsted inspection, which was this year in January 2024. Really proud of the outcome where we achieved outstanding in all areas. However, we recognise there's still plenty for us to do to achieve consistency in children's experiences. And that's all part of our strategic ambition, exceptional experiences for every child, every time, everywhere. And inspectors met with our practitioners and they heard firsthand feedback about what it's like working for Cafcass. And we have lots of quotes that were said directly to inspectors. And that's really what today is about. It's hearing directly from colleagues. So whether you're thinking about a career in Cafcass or whether you just want to learn a bit more about the organisation today, we hope that today's session will answer some of those questions for you. So we're going to first hear from Tony Rowe. So I'll hand you over to Tony.
Hello. So I've been working at Cafcass for around 14 months. I came to social work a little bit late. Previous to that, I had the pleasure of being a student at Cafcass for 6 months. So it was my plan always, if accepted, I was going to come back to Cafcass. I'm just going to speak to you today about wellbeing, flexible working, and work-life balance at Cafcass. So one of the things that really attracted me to Cafcass was that they really care about your well-being. I think we have 4 well-being days a year, so we're able to use those days to do things that matter to us, matter to our well-being. So whatever activities we can explore those on those days. And also, so that's really important. We have a good employee assistance program that supports employees, can support you with your family, any personal matters, and any illness you might have. We also have a good health plan which supports you, so you can get in touch with a GP in an emergency, you can get private prescriptions. So the Cafcass really support you with your well-being. Flexible working was really important to me when I worked at Cafcass as a student. I have a daughter in primary school, so it's really important that I was, able to pick her up from school when I can, and that was really important to me and my family. That I was able to do that. I get to take her to school in the mornings when I can. And also, it does save me paying out for extra school clubs and childcare, so it does save me financially as well. So that was really important to me. I had looked at other social work jobs, but obviously, that I'd been at home later, wouldn't be able to spend that important quality time with my daughter. So I think what's really important to Cafcass, and I think they do really share that with you, is your work-life balance. So I don't, ever feel pressurized to, I think you're able to turn your phone off at, when you finish that day at 5 o'clock. Weekends, you can have those weekends times to yourself and spend that with your family. So you're not under pressure to ever answer your phone or be available when you're not needed to. I think I've worked in lots of industries, and I really found Cafcass had a really grown-up approach. I've never had anyone ring me up and say, "Where are you, Tony? What are you doing?" You know, they let you manage your own time, manage your role, and support you in that. So it's that flexible approach was really important to me. So I'm going to hand back to Rehana now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tony. And it's really interesting listening to you, because a lot of what you said really resonates with myself. So I was also a student at Cafcass in 2008, actually, and I loved it so much. I just couldn't wait to return, and I did a few years later. And the flexible working, I think that's so important, and it was certainly on the top of my list when I was thinking about applying for a permanent position at Cafcass. And I know for a lot of you joining us today, that'll be important for you as well in terms of achieving that work-life balance through the ability to work flexibly in an organisation. Right, then I'm going to hand you over to Katie Ware now. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Katie, and I've worked for Cafcass for 4 years now, having previous to that worked at a local authority for 6 years. Today, I will be speaking a little bit about my experience of how Cafcass provide their workforce with professional development and learning opportunities. So I started at Cafcass as a family court advisor / children's guardian, but this year I've been felt very privileged to be successful in obtaining a permanent role as a consultant family court advisor, in addition to a secondment as an assistant service manager. The assistant service manager role that I've just recently started has me supporting, training and inducting new starters in several geographical areas across Cafcass to make sure that they have a robust package of support in place when they start with us. I think when I think back about previous conversations with colleagues in the local authorities over the years, some people may have hesitated to come to Cafcass before because there appeared to be fewer career development opportunities. But I think in my view, that has shifted considerably. And certainly over the past year, Cafcass have introduced new roles. And it does seem to me that being an employee of Cafcass, that there is a real drive to respond to what we as a workforce say that we need. And I think my ASM role supporting new starters is absolutely evidence of that there was a need there and there's been a way to make that happen. I think just coming to the recent rollout, there was a rollout of a role called the consultant family court advisor role. And that was a huge recruitment drive that Cafcass had to undertake. And it's meant many colleagues who have been here for some time and have really significant experience have had the opportunity to step up and have their skills, their knowledge and their commitment, I guess, to the organisation recognised by taking on this new role. I found the interview and the application process for when I first came to Cafcass, but also my recent roles that I've taken on, to be a very inclusive and strengths-based process. I always felt very much empowered throughout that process. And I think for me that was quite different to some organisations that I've worked for in the past. So that was a really positive step for me. I think something that I've become acutely aware of from the new starters that I support is that the way that we assess and understand domestic abuse as a practice area at Cafcass is so totally different to how it is assessed and understood in other organisations, particularly local authorities. And I think the feedback that I've had from my new starters is that the practice aids that we use at Cafcass and also the training that is now on offer is really beneficial, and it really supports colleagues to feel confident and to feel that they're able to really grasp those issues that obviously are so important for the court to consider. I think another benefit we have at Cafcass that I think is absolutely crucial to our development is our practice week that we have each year. So every year we hold a practice week where essentially we have compulsory and elective training that we are all invited to attend. And it's a really brilliant opportunity to provide us time and space to really focus on our professional development. And also within that process, we go to training events with others all across the country, and I think that's just something that you simply don't get when you work for local authorities. It's quite often you're very individual within your local authority or within the local area, but I found it absolutely invaluable to meet colleagues across the country and get to know how people practice in different ways in different regional areas. So they're just some thoughts from me about what I found really helpful being here at Cafcass in terms of professional development and learning opportunities. And I'll now hand back. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And just thinking about professional development and the offer that we currently have at Cafcass, I can't think of a time where it has been as good as it is now. And we just have a raft of different opportunities to support your professional development. And as Katie's referenced there, the career and learning pathway. So the introduction of the new roles that we have through the CFCA roles and the assistant service manager roles as well. And then we also have the emerging talent programme, apprenticeships, and there's opportunities to become a champion in a practice priority area, and also to become a specialist as well through the practice expert specialist role as well. So there's lots of different ways that we support your professional development. Okay, so I think I'm moving on to who have we got next? Anna. Over to you, Anna.
Great, thank you. I wanted to speak a bit about the managed support, supervision and oversight and where it's different from the local authority. So my name is Anna Shalmadine and I'm a family court advisor doing private law, and I'm based in Devon and Cornwall area, and I've been with Cafcass for about 10 months now, previously within the local authority and various other social work roles in the voluntary sector before that. There's parallels, I think, in terms of local authority practice and what is very common around supervision on having a personal supervision with your line manager. I think what's different within Cafcass is that there's also support available that's situational supervision that you can request. So one-to-one supervision, whether with your direct line manager, the service manager, or with an assistant service manager, where you think specifically around that family. There are key triggers within supervision guidance about when you would request a situation supervision, but also if there is just something that you're finding difficult to make sense of. And I think what I really like about those spaces and where that I find that supervision different is that you don't walk away feeling exhausted from having gone through all your cases and not quite sure rabbits in headlights what to do, but it specifically meets the need of holding a space for reflection about that child, about that family, and you're left with answers or knowing what questions you need to look at to go forwards. The other benefit that I really see within Cafcass is it doesn't feel as hierarchical as I've experienced in other organisations. So I have a huge amount of value from my colleagues. Group supervision is something that feels fairly embedded in the area, the local area that I'm in, so that there are several opportunities in the week that you can come together with your colleagues, and each person could bring a case to talk through. It would be chaired by a service manager or assistant service manager, but that actually, because of the expertise and experience that so many practitioners have within Cafcass, what you get from peers is really valuable. And there's also additional avenues of that support. So when joining, having a buddy, that's really helpful for those little questions of how do you print something or how do you find something on the system. But also you can access peer practice specialists, so a specific practice issue that might be really nuanced. You can have a conversation with someone about that. You can also request to use a psychological consultation. There's also access to the Cafcass library. And what I really have enjoyed, and I know it's mentioned by by my colleague beforehand, Katie, about domestic abuse. So domestic abuse is something that I'm really passionate about, and I think the way Cafcass are approaching that is to recognise what needs to change, where the gaps are, and to be able to. I'm a domestic abuse champion for my area, and it isn't a tokenistic title. Quite often other organisations will have champions of different titles, and it can feel, what does this mean? But actually it is space is made for it. You can claim overtime for within that role. There is a clear structure about how national improvements can then be rolled out within local areas. It was said to me very early on in joining Cafcass about Cafcass being a feedback organisation, and I've very much seen that. So that's thinking about the champion space, that's very much that. So how is it that national changes are being experienced on a local level? How can we learn from that and do that differently? What are the questions from a local level that need to be considered on a more national basis? And that's just, and I'm just focusing on the bit that I know about, and that's around the domestic abuse, but I know there's champions in various different elements of that and various other feedback loops for that. What I would just like to, I think would be helpful to share, is to try and dispel a bit of a myth about private law, perhaps. So I've come into the private law area, having been within public law. The reasons for that is I actually felt I wanted a bit of a rest from some of the themes that you see time and time again in the local authority. But actually, within private law, yes, at times it can feel that stereotypical intractable position between parents and child's voice being lost, but with elements such as the Cafcass positive co-parenting course, it's a strength base. It takes guidance from things like motivational interviewing, where you can bring parents together to really focus in on the child's voice, to think about actually where can we reach some resolution for that. And the other element within private law that I found really interesting is when you're a court-appointed guardian within the private law sector, so the local authority aren't involved, dealing with really complex cases with complex issues, often which can be international as well. So you are really challenged, and I think the opportunities are always there to develop your passions, to develop your expertise, to approach others and learn from their expertise, and to try different things. So I mean, that's it. I'm going to hand back there over to Rehana as my input into that.
Thanks, Anna, for sharing that. And I just want to add really that supervision is so important to us at Cafcass. It's such a difficult job we do when we're making difficult decisions for children. And it's so important that decision making and that accountability is shared with a manager. And as Anna has said, it's about reflection, that clarity, the assurance, and sometimes direction that comes from supervision, and where practitioners come away feeling better and empowered as well from that supervision. And I just want to mention group supervision as well. That's something that's now well embedded here at Cafcass, and practitioners get so much from the peer reflection that comes from group supervision. And it was something that Ofsted commented on as well, how that was an excellent support really to our people here at Cafcass. Okay, so we're now moving on to Emma.
Hello, my name is Emma Peascon. I'm Assistant Service Manager specialising in private law. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the Assistant Service Manager role, some of the workloads and some of the mopping ups. I've made some notes and kind of little bits of gaps that I've identified. But just to put it into context, I started an assistant service manager last October, and it felt a bit of a brave decision for me in the sense of coming back from maternity leave and stepping into a new role, and it's a fairly new role within Cafcass. And I really like this role in the sense of that you're really getting to grips with some management responsibilities. I've been a manager previously in a local authority, but it is quite different in some aspects within Cafcass. And you're really supporting the service manager, as well as still having your what I call sort of your chosen practice, and really getting into grips with some complex and difficult issues that sometimes are presented to you. I suppose what I really liked and still really like around my current role is that the assistant service manager role, in terms of cases, you are protected, and what I mean by that is that there is a certain number of families that you are expected to work with, and you are the oversight is there to make sure that your quality is there, but also actually if you go above that threshold, so to speak, and it's not based on numbers, but it's kind of acknowledging, I suppose, that there is a split divide and two hats, so to speak, in terms of what my role entails. So one hat is very much managing, I have some people underneath me in terms of line responsibility, but the other hat is also making sure that my work is up to par in terms of standard, and meeting the requirements that in terms of inquiries being made with the families that I work with. So I really do like that, but there's still very much feels to me it is really I do find it a challenge, but I really love that, and I am busy, very busy, as I think all my colleagues are, but upon reflecting, I think what Anna said in terms of my experience with the local authority, I don't get that dread, and it sounds really weird, but I don't get that dread when I come back from annual leave. I'm not saying that everything's hunky-dory, but there certainly seems to be a sense of I'm ready to come back to work. I feel like I've had a break. I feel I'm just about to say refreshed, but I have 2 young children under 5, so perhaps not refreshed, but I certainly feel like there's not that anxiety there when I come back, and that's a big change for me, and it really makes a big impact for me in my own well-being and how the difficult demands of being a mum. And in terms of that workload, I just feel incredibly pleased and proud to be able to have other projects that I really enjoy. Equality and diversity is really important to me, and I love working and having and sharing my knowledge working with deaf and blind families. So and quite a lot of my role is taken up with that and providing consultations across Cafcass with some of the experience and the work that I know, with my passion. And so again, my workload is adjusted. I think, as my colleague Anna said, again, in terms of practice week, if there is things or other commitments that you have, Cafcass do offer the opportunity to accrue or earn back some time in terms of paid hours, which I feel again highlights that the value they recognise that actually there's that juggling act that we have to do with our work commitments, and if you do have a court hearing, obviously that has to take priority. And I just feel that is recognised again within our workload. There's that balance there between making sure that we are able to access our training and development, but as well as doing our everyday roles and tasks as well. Again, I'm just thinking from an assistant service manager point of view, with the staff that I line manage in terms of their workload, we do our very best to sort of front load inquiries where we can and plan our work, but that doesn't always happen with the nature of the job. And a big focus for me in the past year is really looking at delay and the impact of delay for the children, but also to make sure that we close the families that we work with in good time, so that the children that we work with and the families we work with know exactly when our work has come to an end, and that also I feel helps the practitioners as well that I oversee to manage their workload and be really conscientious of where there is a role for us and where there isn't a role for us. I think that's probably what I wanted to cover today, so I'll hand back. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. And just listening to what you were saying there, it's so important that there is a protected caseload when we work with a number of families, that you have healthy workloads, and that's twofold really. It's to protect you as a practitioner, to enable but also to enable children and families to get the best from us as well. Okay, so thank you everybody for sharing your experiences of what it's like working for Cafcass, and I hope you all found that helpful. We're going to move on to some questions now. I believe there's a question about private law, and I think Anna's going to take this question.
Yeah, certainly. The question was about private law, recognising the difficult cases. Is a co-parenting approach really what is best? It continues to feel like contact at all costs. And I guess the first thing I would say is that I think it's fair to say historically, private law courts, a view of contact at all costs possibly has been in the case there. I would certainly say that isn't the view of Cafcass. The view is always going to be around safety and a child's best interest, and what's very helpful in terms of the evidence-based tools that are within Cafcass and that we're supported to use is so that we can be making a view that is evidence-based. So, for instance, an example being the Safe Lives Dash risk assessment will regularly be used. There's innovations and pilots on at the minute that are refocusing that tool to think specifically from a Cafcass perspective and focusing in on impact on a child, so that any recommendations would be safe for that. There is still work to be done within the courts. I think it's fair to say that there's regional differences of whether that contact at all costs view is still a view that's adopted by the courts. I think that does change within areas. But what I think I would say is that if there is ever an order that is made that doesn't seem to be safe for a child, there are mechanisms in place in which that can be challenged, and there is very much management support in which you can do that. And the other element, it was mentioned about a co-parenting approach. I think that's something else that's is considered, is also actually parallel parenting. What does that look like? And in establishing co-parenting approaches, I guess it's not so much linked to the question, but I think it's still important to raise. You know, Cafcass also offers things to parents to support with that. So the Planning Together for Children being a course that parents can access, it can be court directed, it can be referred within the process and not necessarily a contact activity, to equip parents with skills and techniques to manage conversations, as well as the Cafcass Positive Co-Parenting course, which I mentioned earlier on, that looks at how to manage that. What's really key, I think, in that question, and that is a focus for Cafcass, is assessing and understanding and differentiating between harmful conflict and domestic abuse, because what that means for a child, what that means for their relationship with each of their parents and their safety, and what that means for their future, and building on that. The answer to how we understand that is really incredibly vital. So it absolutely isn't contact at all costs. And I can think of many occasions actually where I haven't recommended there to be direct contact, and there's been some really helpful input from some recent learning from the Family Justice Young People's Board about how we can think differently about indirect contact, because actually indirect contact, if it's a video call, if it's a telephone call, actually is that actually direct contact, because that's very much an experience of it. So yeah, I can whistle on for ages, but let me leave it there.
No, thank you, Anna. And you've answered that really well. And just to concur with that, it has to be informed by assessment, and the child's safety and welfare is absolutely paramount, and that is the first consideration. I can see a couple of questions now. I couldn't see them before. So there's a question around flexible working. Does Cafcass offer the option for working compressed hours? So we do offer a range of flexible working patterns. And that's something that can be explored with you, and you can raise that very early on in your application, and it's certainly something that will be considered. And we have a range of different arrangements in place, so 9-day fortnights, part-time working hours, and really it's dependent on your need, but we can certainly have that conversation. There's another question about full-time and part-time roles. Yes, absolutely. Again, you know, thinking about the what we said at the beginning of the session around that flexible working, that's something that we fully support, and we have full-time, part-time, different hours and different days, so lots of different arrangements, and nothing is really off the table. It's all up for discussion, and we can certainly have that conversation with you, but please be sure that that's something that we will absolutely consider. I can't see any more questions.
We do have another question. I think Anna was going to take this one. Does Cafcass provide any specialised training on parental alienation?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that because I know it's an absolute hot potato. I think first of all, it's important to say in terms of parental alienation, Cafcass, and it's available on the website, and I can pop the link in if it's helpful, because there isn't because Cafcass offer a description of alienating behaviours. It as a term isn't something that's recognised, and I think there's been a lot of learning about experts or so-called experts, it's fair to say, making comments on alienating behaviours. And the reason why I wanted to jump in on this is actually it's so closely linked in terms of how we understand domestic abuse, because it's very well known that somebody stating there's parental alienating behaviours is very often said as a response to when someone has said that they've experienced domestic abuse. That isn't to say that in instances there can be a parent that doesn't support a child's relationship with their other parent, and that yes, of course, that would be emotionally harmful to that child, but that we need to really carefully think about alienating behaviours and domestic abuse, and Cafcass provides some very clear tools to help guide that, to differentiate those different elements of behaviours and children's responses and how we understand that. There is, I don't know whether somebody might be coming back, or whether there's a structured training. I have certainly, within my time in Cafcass, been to a conference that focused in on alienating behaviours, and I've also accessed training within Cafcass on that as well. So yes, there is training available, there are tools available, and this is very much along with a space that's talked about within situational supervision and group supervision. So it's a really interesting and conflictual area of practice, and very live, that's for sure.
Thank you, Anna. I don't think there's any more questions, is there? So should
Just
we?
one, Rehana, on inductions, which I know you were keen to talk about anyway.
Oh yes. Yeah, that's a question that comes up quite a lot, is around what is the induction like at Cafcass. We have a comprehensive induction plan for anybody new joining the organisation at whatever level that is. And that includes a range of training, classroom-based training, lots of e-learning, lots of one-to-ones, support through your line manager, your assistant service manager. So, and we do that deliberately because you recognise that it feels very different when you join Cafcass from a different organisation, usually the local authority, and we want to give you every opportunity really to learn about the organisation, learn about how we do things here, and time for you to consolidate that learning as well. Because we hear things like people saying it can feel very different. Some people describe it as feeling a little bit de-skilled, even though they come with lots of experience from their previous employment. So we really take that time really to invest in that induction. It's really important to us, and we're really proud of our induction offer, and we get lots of good feedback about our induction too. Is there anything else, Ian, in terms of questions?
Just one that Joanna's posed, and was just asking about the background that Cafcass are looking for in social workers.
In terms of experience, I think that's set out in the advert. It used to be 5 years experience, but I think that's been reduced in recent years. So it's really, I would say, it's about demonstrating how you meet the skills and competencies that are required to be a family court advisor at Cafcass, and how you're able to demonstrate that in your application and the interview itself. And we have people joining us from local authority teams, from fostering teams as well. As long as you can demonstrate that you have the skills to be able to provide that service to children and families, then that's something that we would absolutely welcome.
Yeah,
Is there anything else?
I think that feels like our last question. So, Priya, just want to kind of take us on to our slide about community care. That's okay.
Don't think the slides moved on.
Yeah, 1 second.
Sorry, we've got some issues here with the slide deck. There we go. I think it was a little bit slow.
Oh, I think we're on the video. Yes, there we go.
Okay.
So just drawing your attention to Community Care Live later this year. So that's on the 8th and 9th of October, taking place in London. So we have a masterclass on the 8th of October, and that's about our Together framework and restorative relationships and how we work with children and families in accordance to our Together framework. Then on the 9th of October, we have a seminar on engaging children in decision making and making sure that the young person's voice is the loudest voice and the one that everybody hears. Then we have a wellbeing session on the 9th of October as well, and that's about self-compassion for social workers and looking after ourselves and making sure that we are kind to ourselves, recognising how difficult this job is that we do. And then we're concluding with a final session on legal learning, and that's on the 9th of October as well, and understanding why a child does not want to see a parent in the context of private family law proceedings. Okay, if we move on to the next slide. Okay, so if you want to find out a bit more about Cafcass, you can find us on our website. There's the link there on the slide, and also on LinkedIn. I think we have a YouTube channel as well, and you can also find us on X too. Okay, if we move on to the final slide. Okay, huge thank you for taking the time to join us today. Hope you found it helpful and that we've been able to answer some of your questions today. And a massive thank you to all our colleagues who joined us on this online session today. And if you've still got questions, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and I'm sure we can answer them for you. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care. Bye.